Okay. Okay. This thing has a tendency to come off, so it's perfectly fine until I had to move it. And then it's so my apologies here. Okay, come on. That worked better than I would have thought. So let's. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, just we've been kind of looking through the glossary of this very good book, Journey to the Heart of Aikido by Linda Holiday Sensei. And okay. Where is it? Oh, yes. Okay. The term I thought we would start with today, the glossary section, is kami. Kami. Okay. And spirits, the divine sacred nature, specific deities of Shinto. Kami can refer to anything that generates a feeling of awe or sacredness. Okay. Yeah. So Osensei was very much into using the language and the symbology. Let me close the window because we're getting a wee wet. I don't know. I don't know if that helps. But he was very into kami. Okay. And kami, of course, is connected to the Shinto religion. And he talked about the kami a lot. So they're individual kami. And there's a term of kami, I guess, just spirit. But, Izanagi, Izanami, Amaterasu, Susano, those are names of major kami. Ame no Minakanushi no Umi kami, out of some sort of primordial void or chaos. There's a point. And because it was the first thing that flashes into existence, it was the universal center. And then right around it, kami and takami musubi no mikami. And a lot of times that's translated centripetal force. But establishing the center, then you have movement of forces around that. Then it goes dot, 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 that goes crazy. Kami, kami, beget kami, kami, right? You get to about the 6th or 7th generation of kami. And then you finally, apparently, get masculine, feminine, Izanagi, Izanami. The first 5 or 6 generations, there's no gender, okay? And of course, it's Izanagi and Izanami that stand on the floating bridge of heaven. And with the magical jewel spear, they stir the heavenly brine. The drops come off of that. They congeal into the islands of Japan, which I've always interpreted, but that's kind of the physical creation of the universe, okay? So, 2 forces coming together bound by a certain sort of love, an attraction, given a tool, the sacred spirit. And the space where all that happens is between the genderless kami, is Takamagahara, the high plane of heaven. And then, of course, then there's now the more earthly realm that is Kudu. So, in that bridge is positioned between. So, the floating bridge of heaven, Izanagi, Izanami, or vice versa. I'm not sure where you position them. It's just this exists, therefore that exists, or that exists, before this exists. So, they're kind of in that particular area. And Cliff, any history with that on your part, or any questions?
I mean, I don't really know too much about the Kojiki or any of that, other than what we've discussed in class and a little comparative religion. So, I have some sense of the kami from talking to the Japanese mother of one of my college roommates who was Japanese. And she discussed it with me at one point, but that's about it.
Well, one of the things about, let's just say, the whole sense of kami, spirits, the universe is conscious. There are energy, spirits. We have the physical realm here, but also, and the energies and spirits are conscious, as we are conscious. We're just conscious in a much more limited human, we're reacting to living in very dense matter. And there's also these energies. And one of the major terms that Hikizuchi Sensei mentioned, in fact, let me see. Is it? Huh. Oh. I think this was 1977 when I was leaving Japan. Hikizuchi Sensei presented me with this. And so the Aikido, that's Aikido, okay? Those three characters. But the top, and the characters as they're read is Jinsu. Jin, Shin, Kami. Sujiru, to communicate. So this has followed me through quite a bit. I'll make sure I put it somewhere. And so, the Aikido that communicates to the collective spirit or spirits. And, I could be wrong, just the way I look at it. But, you can look at, for example, Mr. Einstein and all his equations. That one way of looking at it. So the names of the different kami represent different workings or equations that comprise the workings of the universe. Daiuchu no mihataraki. Okay. And then, Sensei kind of, wasn't just training in the physical, he trained in other dimensions. And so, he was somebody who could communicate to these forces, or he had a certain facility with these universal numbers. And one of the things that you could say, what device did he use? Well, I think there were, but the koto tama, the sounds, koto, word, tama, sound. So, and we're talking about, he did a lot of work chanting. I do quite a bit of work with the chanting and the prayers. But, for me, for example, I'm not looking at that more like I am doing a spiritual prayer. It's for me more like I like doing it because it's like doing a jazz solo. And, I like making sounds that, are, I mean, you can kind of go through Takamaga Harani Mototsumi. Oh, Maharani Mototsumi Ayasume Kami. So, that's it's like, holding a horn and okay. By the way, can you hear that? Because I know the sound system with the does that come through distorted or
Yes.
or
No, I could hear it. I could hear it. Fine, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, the chanting, you go ah, go ah, go ah, ah, ah. Okay, now you can, I mean, the singer, oh, that's a vibrato. Oh, it's a little different. Oh, Maharani Mototsumi Ayasume Kami. Okay, so, does any of that come across at all?
Yeah, I'm reading you loud and clear. It's all coming through.
Yeah, so the sound, I mean, to some degree, and then or conversely, it goes the other way. Universe wants to talk to you. You start a dialogue. I remember I sent a piece of music I did a while back to a lady who is a very, apparently she owns every recorded thing that the jazz musician Chet Baker ever did. And so she kind of listened to what I did and says, I like the way you bend the notes, like Chet. Oh. And one of the things about Baker is that standard sound, but he had to his sound. It's not a vibrato, right? And I remember one of his good friends, one of my friends, really, or Frank, very, very talented drummer, bebop drummer. And Art, not in addition to, he boxed and he was a bodybuilder. And so, he had really strong hands, probably still does, right? And he said something like, he would take these steel spikes and he'd go to power lifters or NFL football players. He said, can you bend this? And then Art would go and he would bend it. All right. And so he said he's talking to Chet Baker and says, you know, Chet, he gives him a steel spike, says, I can bend that with my hands. And so apparently what Baker did, he said, you mean like this, Art? He bent it. And, you know, I mean, Baker was a jazz musician. He didn't train, he didn't, I mean, he wasn't like into building his body up or anything like that. In fact, you know, he was, you know, maybe about 5'10", 130 pounds. Okay. And so I asked Art, I said, how do you do it? And Art looked at me and he said, you know, Jack, I don't know. But I think intuitively it has something to do with breath. And so, I mean, I can't bend steel, I can't dodge bullets or anything like that. But with Shiva, you know, if I listen to his chanting, that's some of which is available, you know, if you look at some of the videos of him, he definitely had that same sort of a quality in his sound. And so when I pray, you know, or do the Nordito, I actually, it's less like what I'm trying to do is pray to, I like the experience of being in the sounds, and there's an aliveness of the sounds, that sort of a, you know, like bending the sounds. And then, you know, you could look at, you know, the term in Japanese is Daiichi no Hibiki. Means the sound current of the universe. The whole universe we see in a material way, but it also exists on a vibrational, energetic level. And so, you know, the term kami are different notes and different rhythms. So I kind of see the term kami a little differently than maybe other people. You know, Hikizuchi Sensei one time, he says, you know, when I'm talking about kami, Jack, I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about ki. The whole universe is ki anyway. What came out of ki, so it has its own balances and its own equations and its own functions within itself, within the larger universes, different workings. Okay, so that's kind of what I consider kami. So, anything?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of analogous to you know, when I studied sitar, my teacher Ali Akbar Khan, you know, he would talk about music being for God, and he was Muslim. It's a Muslim North Indian music tradition, but it's also India. And so, for example, there's part of the sitar, one element of the sitar, at least in my sitar, was carved into, and most sitars, a swan. There's a little bead that you use for fine tuning the main string, then it's shaped like a swan, and that's an animal that is sacred to Saraswati, the Hindu goddess of music. So there was this sense of the sacredness about all aspects of the music, and a lot of I mean, first of all, sitar is a stringed instrument, and so it's literal vibrations, right? So not even metaphorical vibrations of the universe, literal. And the sympathetic strings vibrate when you hit one of the main strings, a note, so it vibrates in harmony with what you're playing, and you can bend the pitch up to a fifth. So there's a lot of expressiveness that is like vocal expressiveness, or like a horn kind of expressiveness, where you're bending pitch a lot. And so there's this element of the physical vibration, the metaphorical vibration, and the sacredness of the music that is wrapped up in that. So I'm about to switch to my Mac, so you'll hear those sounds.
Okay. You know, when I'm, well, okay, for example, that's a straight stream of breath. So when I play, that's kind of in my breath stream. I can exaggerate it a little bit more, but you know, the sense of breath, sound, and kind of that resonance between the two is kind of, you know, when I'm doing the prayers, that's what I focus on. Abe Sensei, you know, who had a dojo in Osaka, was O-sensei's calligraphy teacher. O-sensei decided at some point he wanted to study calligraphy. And then found out one of his students, I guess, was a calligraphy teacher. So he studied with Mr. Abe. And Abe Sensei would oftentimes, we had him over at the old dojo a couple of times. Would demonstrate, you know, people would grab the wrist and demonstrate the sword application of a movement. But he would do various calligraphy figures and throw people. But, and this is something I read, is like somebody, he was talking about breath, for example, it's different than breathing. If you put the brush to the paper and you go like this, you tear the paper. So there's a particular and he said that his breath practice, because, you know, he heard O-sensei do the Norito prayer, you know, and so he would, you know, I mean, he basically learned the changes of breath and spacing. Like when you're playing, there's a lot of variations possible within a certain amount of measure, you know, and that to me has always been one of the major things. I would sort of listen to Chet Baker and play along with him, and then I play by myself. And there was that sense. I mean, obviously, it probably exists with other musicians, but I've always had a very deep almost, you know, even though I never met him as far as I know, connection to him. And, you know, I mean, since they died both, well, this fellow here could bend steel. And so somehow there's this physical training and, the way that Art put it. NFL football players, power lifters, they couldn't bend the steel. He could bend the steel. And so there's a whole other level of who we are and what the universe really is that, has always been really fascinating to me. So, I didn't know anything about this bending steel, but I was always attracted to his music, still am, right? That's my attempt at Funny Valentine, which is his signature song. He kind of made it his. I mean, I've heard other people do it and do it really well, but that was Chet's song. And so, it's funny that when I started picking this up and playing, I mean, I had a lot of trouble, but I could always play that song. It's really interesting. But anyway, so.
In high school, I was in the musical that song is from, which is a Rodgers and Hart musical, and
Yeah,
done by Rodgers and Hammerstein.
I've talked to some, professional vocalists. You know what they said? That is a very difficult song. I mean, you wouldn't think so because, range-wise. But the song itself, they said, was very difficult to do.
Yeah, I still remember the high school girl who was the soloist for that song. It was really beautiful.
Well, you can kind of do it in a way that, my funny Valentine, you have proper context to it. I mean, Baker's style, so to speak, was very low-key, almost subdued, both with the horn, and he was also a vocalist. My funny Valentine, sweet funny Valentine. And you can kind of tell with that, there's that area where most players, the string goes out like that. And with Baker, it was that. And when I listened to Shiba Sensei, when he does his Shinto chants, as I said, when I do the Shinto chants, I'm not to some degree praying. For me, it's like a jazz solo, which I enjoy. I enjoy making those sounds. There's a certain energy in my system where that, right? The other thing that is kind of interesting, I think, for example, now we have a sphere, and basketball. And I was reading an article about Larry Bird, Boston Celtics great. And he talked about when you're shooting, the two things you want to get spin. You could throw up a knuckleball, which the Warrior great Tim Hardaway, he kind of had no rotation on the shot. He just threw it up, and he was pretty good with it. Okay. but with rotation. And you want arc. And one of the things, for example, let's study Stephen Curry. And it's a one-handed shot, but guess what? Because I've kind of played around with it a little bit. Both hands. If you're too tight, you don't get any rotation. If you're too loose, you don't get rotation. There's that, what they call touch and arc. And what you're doing is where you are, there's this space where you're creating the proper rotation and arc to connect your space to the hoop. And I read an article about Curry once. And when he's shooting, it's not just that it goes in, it's that it makes a certain sound as it's going through. So, we're looking at, we got a couple of my real, there's O-Sensei, obviously, right? There's O-Sensei. But then again, there's Chet Baker. And there's also Stephen Curry. He had a horrible game last night. That team's in a lot of trouble, and he's supposed to carry it. And he will have his off nights, but touch. In fact, when I was able to do it more, I remember my partner Elle. She went to the YMCA with me, and they went indoor hardwood court, which is fun. That's not so easy outside, on concrete. And she said, when you're shooting and it goes in. It's silent. And I said, yeah, but the net vibrates a certain way. And so when I read the article about Stephen Curry, you're kind of in a different space. You don't measure it by whether or not it goes in or not. But it's almost like, when you get your mechanics, yeah, it doesn't really make a sound, but there's a vibration in the way that ball goes through the hoop. And you work on your positioning. And you also work on how you position. I mean, his shot is not a one-handed shot, although he shoots that way sometimes. When he's, driving to the hoop, it's called a floater, okay? But when he's shooting from distance, there's a tension between the hands. It's just right, and it produces a spin. And there's a certain area where there's an alignment or a vibration or a rhythm, and that shot goes. Boom, boom, boom. And when you really hit it, I mean, it's, I don't do it so much anymore. So I'm kind of out of practice. But when that shot goes, let me tell you, it's poetry. It's very difficult to explain. It's not just the ball goes through the hoop. It's like, wow. So, we're talking about things like rotation. Aikido is rotation. We're talking about arc as opposed to. Now we've also referenced sound. And then, how does that reference to what we call kami? Breath, motion, creates rhythm sound within your system. which has a resonance with, let's just say, the different functions or equation, the inner equation and the outer equation. It goes both ways. The universe wants to talk to you. I'm too busy being kind of an insulated, noisy mind guy. And then as a reply, conversely, something here starts to resonate with what's out there. That's, to me, is what prayer is. I mean, good music is almost divine, or is divine. Okay, whatever. And I don't do that so much anymore. I'm playing with the horn, or just moving with a staff or sword. Okay. Let me check the time. Oh, we're moving along. Any comments or anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, any kind of movement or art that achieves momentary perfection or apotheosis is in that category of divine. Like you play a run that's just the right run with the right articulation, or you hit a home run, or you shoot a basket and the net goes right, like you're saying, or you do an Aikido throw, or you receive an Aikido throw in a way that is like momentary perfection. It touches and enters the realm of the numinous.
Yeah, humans, yeah.
You feel that strongly when it happens, and you remember sometimes years later.
If you watch O Sensei's stuff, he touches the realm of the numinous. I remember when I got back from Japan, I was talking to Nado Sensei. There was a lunch meeting he had with Frank Duran Sensei. And I used to go train at Stanford with Duran Sensei, and then sometimes we go to lunch. And this occasion that, I was there, and it was kind of, in those days, it was an area meeting, even though it wasn't a structure for it. Two major teachers, and so, I started talking to Nado Sensei about O Sensei. He said, Jack, you look at the actual videos of them. In those days, there weren't videos, they were just home movies. Okay. And he says, you see the people in the background, and their form is better than his. I went, no. And then he's coming up here. They were like, and I said, that's strange, but that's what consciousness is. So there's that, the term that she used, I think, is one of my favorite words I haven't thought of in a while, called numinous. Numinosity, I imagine, is probably the narrowing equivalent. So, if you're going, you're kind of like a Shinto priest. Kind of a column of vibration along with the breath. And then there's energy or kind of something that it resonates with out there, like two tuning forks. The universe is a bigger tuning fork, but if you get this little tiny tuning fork sort of along the gong, then the larger tuning fork will also start to go gong like that. So, resonance. Kototama. Okay, yeah. Let me put this away before I lose it. Now, Okay. Raise the sword, you kind of, you do this enough, maybe your wrists and arms get stronger. Four. Okay. So that's a couple of swings. I don't shoot hoops much anymore these days, although sometimes I'll go out there and embarrass myself. But, I do swing dice. Pick one up and swing a couple of times. Anything?
When I do it better, it has that same vibrational energy as shooting a basket with the net vibrating.
Yeah, kind of, And you talk about what power is, right? Power is the ability to affect change. And pulling up from 30 feet and hitting nothing but net is the game winner. You don't have to be 7 foot tall, weigh 260 pounds, and jump out of the gym. And I'm going this way. Let's stick on the net. Now, I could be swinging the sword, and there are basics like how you hold the hand. For example, here I'm raising with my right hand and swinging out there. It creates a loop, okay? Dot, dot. But right here, the left hand's involved in that. And it's a big loop when you go out here with the right hand. Okay? And the left and the right have a dialogue. One's Izanagi, one's Izanami. And that dialogue is that vibration happening through you. Now your own breath and the aliveness of your own breath, the vibrational aliveness of it, creates a resonance pattern. You can do this and just swing and swing and swing and swing. Boom, 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 boom. Right? So it's similar, yeah. So when I'm working with the vocab, that's my practice. It has a lot to do with breath, vibration. Okay? Even sound. Whoosh. Okay? So that's a good practice. Oh, that's what I'm doing right there is more associated with the spear and the staff. It's shape to it. Boom, but boom. Boom. That's for me the sound of the ball going through the net. Understand? Anything?
No additional insights at this time that I can verbalize.
Okay. So, you know, the term of what's kami? Well, kami is kami, you know. But, you know, what can I do to personalize that? You know, breath work. I like the sound work, motion that comes out of that connection between the breath and the sound. In fact, really, you know, the outer motion is the outer motion. Okay. With the aliveness, breath, and sound. I liked your word because, you know, it's one of my favorite words that I just, when you said it today, I realized I hadn't really thought of it in a while. Called numinosity. Boom, it's numinous. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. And, you know, as you do that, you know, you're either, of course, you're getting some exercise, but what you're really doing is fine tuning. Right. There's breathing, and there's breath. And then there's the aliveness of breath, which is kind of a vibration. And then, of course, there's the sound that's produced as an after effect. There's a breath, there's the aliveness of that breath. There's a form of Aikido. That's just like the sound, okay? So, so nothing much to add at this point?
An analogy. So I don't know if you've ever gotten to see Ringo Starr drumming in person, but it's also something you can see in videos of him with and after the Beatles. That most drummers, you know, they drum and they're banging on things and whatever. Some of them have beautiful articulation and perfect timing. But Ringo feels the rhythm in his body, and you can see the body embodying, as it were, the music, and the drumming is like a side effect of that. Yeah. Right? Like you can watch his center and his torso and in the way he moves, and when the sticks hit the cymbals or the drums or whatever, it's just like it's an after effect. And I think the sword, when you do it right, or any move when you do it right, you know, it's within you, and the sword swings as a side effect of the breath and the body movement. Yeah. And is the most visible aspect of the phenomenon to an observer, but the internal kinesthetic sense of it is that, you know, it's a side effect. The sword moving is a side effect of the breath and the movement of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, the mechanics of the sword are important. You know, but it's interesting that when you have the kind of, we call the breath and the vibration, the movement is truth, right? And you know, really, what you're doing is you're finding a resonant note inside you. You know, and you know, I mean, when I hear Chet Baker's music, he is that music, and that music is him. And you know, I mean, you could argue, I mean, you may have your own favorite trumpet player, you know, Miles Davis is a great player. But I tend to listen to Chet a lot more than I do Miles. You know, Miles is good, you know. Listen to Birth of the Cool, one of his biggest albums, and a lot of times I play along with it, you know, just to get different rhythms, get out of old phrasing patterns and find new ones. But you know.
That's a fantastic album.
Yeah. So anyway, let's just check. Yeah, we're moving along. Okay. For example, we go here. Boom, 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 boom. Now these are forms. Okay. Now I'm gonna grab here and then re-grip here, or I'm gonna go this way, grip this way, and I'm gonna do a movement this way. And right here, re-grip, at that motion. It's a form, it's also a breath rhythm here. Boom, 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 boom. And just like, you can phrase with the horn. I mean, I'm not sure whether this is appropriate or not, but and I mean, this I don't really know what I'm going to play, but this change leads to this change, leads to this change, leads to this change, leads to this change, and let's say this side represents Izanagi, this side represents Izanami, or vice versa. And the movement, left talks to right, right talks to left. Yeah, boom, 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 boom. Oh, by the way, you were talking about Ringo Starr. The man I mentioned earlier, Art Frank. I've been in his presence a couple times and listened and watched him play the drums. He's like that,
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, somebody, they are the music, they are the rhythm, and it's cool when you see that. I mean, Curry, for example, he is that shot, right? Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. This change leads to this change, leads to this change, leads to this change, leads to this change, this change. You asked me what I just did. I don't know. I mean, I could tape it and then, come up with a sequence and I have a form. Okay. But what happens there is, and I get better at it. Okay. One of the things, I'm teaching at San Jose State, so we're going through some of this stuff. And the way I put it this way, there's information. A certain level of that information can become some level of knowledge. Okay. And then there's what you call a third thing, is called intelligence. There's information, there's knowledge, and there's intelligence. And you could say on some level, intelligence is getting the right information that goes a little deeper into knowledge. Knowledge is form. Okay? But then there's a question of intelligence. Is intelligence just assembling this and converting it to that, or they do that fast? Yeah, that's part of it. But intelligence, okay? And again, one of my favorite Einstein quotes, creativity is intelligence having fun. So you can know this and have consolidated it into a structure. And there's intelligence that's necessary, but there's a whole other level of intelligence. We got to do something like that. Okay. And you're kind of stuck in gathering the information and kind of putting it into a structure. Okay. But where's the fun in it? And so what you really need is intelligence. And that intelligence wants to be creative. And what's created is fun. Okay, we're gonna go that way, that way, that way, that way, that way. When I watch Art Frank play the drums, he is just in that space, right? I imagine, just being with Chet Baker when he was playing, it's probably the same thing. Okay, and there's form and structure, but there's that level of where's the intelligence? Well, boom, 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 boom. For example, that way, so lost it for a second, but it's right there. Anything you might want to add, or?
No, I like that idea of that definition of creativity.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. Creativity is intelligence having fun. Yeah. Yeah, I think O-sensei, existed in a very, very magical, very, very wonderful, very fun universe. Okay. And then you you look over what's happening in the world now, and you wish the world were a little bit more built along those, more original lines, right? I mean, intelligence cannot have fun. You can be so disillusioned by what's going on out there that you go, You can get into denial, whatever, nihilism, whatever. But part of what I think O-sensei taught was misogi, the cleansing. Way Bruce Lee put it, empty your mind. Be shapeless, formless like water. And right there, there's a sense of wonder. I mean, when I go on the basketball court, I'm kind of taking 3-point shots and go, wow. I remember I had a not so good session where you're trying to throw the ball to hoop, and then I just calmed down and I hit about 3 in a row. I didn't go back to the basketball court for a couple of months because I just wanted to soak in it. Soak in it. Soak in what? That's a good question. O-sensei might say, soak in kami. Okay. So, my sense of kami is tied to things like creativity, art, Yeah, and it generates, I remember one time, when I was reading Marvel comics, somebody, apparently Stan Lee used to answer the letters pages. And so somebody said, Stan, I just want to let you know that your comics instill in me a sense of wonder. And Lee just said, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And you don't know how many sleepless nights go into that. Okay. But that, that numinous, that numinosity is very cleansing. I mean, that's what an artist does. An artist doesn't create for the world. An artist creates for himself or herself. And that numinosity, that sense of wonder, is your lifeblood. So when O-sensei was praying, I don't know what he was doing, but for me, when I do some of the same sounds, I'm creating. And there are energies that move through me when I do that. Anyway, what I was thinking about doing, so we're just about there. Yeah, I was thinking what I might do. It takes about a couple of minutes, not very long. O-sensei's birthday, Washiba, the founder of Aikido, was yesterday, the 14th, so it was 15th. It's a day late. I'm going to do Amatsu Norito. We've done sections of it today, but okay, so we'll do that, then we'll end the class. O Maharani Mototsumi Yasune Okami あまたの神々を集えてとことはにかみすまります。かむろにかむろみのみこともちて、かむいざなぎのみこと、つくしのひむかの立ち花のどのあはぎががらに、急ぎ払い、たむときになりませる笑いどの狼たち、もろもろのまがごと積みげがれを払いたまえ、清めたまえと申すことのよしを、天つかみ、国つかみや不よろずの神たちともに、雨の淵駒の耳振り立てて聞こしめせとかしこみも回す。こんながらたまちはいませ。こんながらたまちはいませ。Yeah. Anyway, technically you do that with 2 bows and 4 claps, but I kind of do this form. I do it standing. I could do it sitting, and then instead of the 4 claps, I'll go left, right, up, and down. It's the water. This is the fire. All right. And, so anyway, that's the full Amatsu Norito. I kind of wonder whether anybody's interested in learning it. It's gonna die with now. It's one of my. I know Linda Holiday Sensei also chants. I don't know if Mary Honey Sensei does anymore. She used to. I think she got into Tibetan Buddhism, and I think that suits her. more, but I used to, I learned actually a lot of that from Hikizuchi sensei, because he chanted just about every day. You went to the morning class, class is over, you stayed for the morning prayers. Okay, so we got a lot of it. And in fact, you know, what was kind of interesting, because you know the British author Michael Moorcock, right? And the character Elric. Well, I remember, you know, one of my first impressions of Hikizuchi sensei when he was doing that, and Elric is a sword and sorcery character, and you know, he has a black magic sword, you know, Stormbringer, but he also is a sorcerer. And so, you know, sometimes when things get really bad, he can't necessarily deal with, you know, everything with just his sword. He has to call in, you know, and there's a whole series of what he calls the chaos gods. And he does these spells to call in these deities, right? And so, you know, when I would listen to Hikizuchi sensei kind of doing the Norito, I used to go, oh, that's like Elric. So, you know, in that way, you know, I kind of, you know, and so, you know, a full session, which this wasn't, takes me about 20 minutes. And what I'm doing is just chanting ancient Japanese, the majority of which I the energy associated with what I'm, it's almost like playing, lining up. Anyway, anything before we go?
No, I mean, I other than that, I can tell that when you're doing it, you know, I can get a sense of that. Also, by the way, the sound worked fine. I was able to hear the.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've always been kind of thinking, well, I don't know if this would work, because the sound, especially through Zoom, has been very, you know,
Yeah.
you have to wait until this gets, you know, put out there so I can listen to it. Okay, because sometimes you can't tell from just the recording if it works or not. Okay, so we will be in, what will we be? We will be in
Mountain View.
Mountain View on Sunday, okay? Then I think next week's classes are pretty much, yeah, they're pretty much going to be the last thing, but we're taking Christmas Eve day to New Year's Eve day off. So there won't be any in-person or video classes. And what I'm going to try to do is, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've done here that I'm sort of behind on posting to YouTube. So I'll kind of get some of that stuff out there. Hopefully this one, I think this is an interesting class. And we will be having a class January 1st. Bring in the new year. So no Sunday class, but I can't remember whether the first is might be a Monday. So, you know, chance to train in the new year. I will also do a full ceremony, not just what I did, but the full thing, just to kind of pure. The sounds, I mean, really what it amounts to is you can have religious, this, but when you're kind of in your creative flow, you're in touch with the sacred nature of things and yourself. So, I mean, that to me, but very little right now to get nature of stuff. And take things into your own hands, and you create a practice for yourself. That's really what Aikido is. Okay, we're not just a fancier form of jujitsu. Jujitsu is better, you know, for certain things. I mean, if people just want to roll around and twist and throw and torque and everything like that, jujitsu does that. We're a little bit different. So Aikido was kind of a gateway to the numinous. So I like, you know, the fact that you reintroduced me to one of my very favorite words, numinosity, numinous. Anyway, so thank you for tuning in. And
Sensei, see you Sunday.
yeah, so we will